Now, I've been playing PSVR2 pretty heavily since launch, and as someone who spent a lot of time in PSVR1 with those terrible Move controllers that I couldn't even bring myself to get them up and put them in this video because I have such bad memories of them, how am I finding the PSVR2 controllers? These things look like an absolute piece of art. I mean, they wouldn't look out of place in the museum, frankly. They're very, very, very sci-fi. It's kind of like proper Sony, not PlayStation Sony, but like proper Sony doing like proper Sony things. And they actually remind me of like a Bluetooth speaker I used to have once with Sony. It almost looks exactly like this. But how are they to use? I mean, I've been playing quite a few games that use these controllers, and you know, on the face of it, they should be a lot better than the Move controllers. We have a analog stick on both of them. We have an actual proper trigger with the resistive like haptic feedback. We have basically every single button that you have actually on a DualSense controller, because we have R1 and L1 here. So these are the bumper buttons that are actually on the inside. And they look quite unusual. So how are they? Well, I think I've got a few improvements I would make to them. Overall, they're pretty good. I don't like how they don't fit very neatly in the official charger. I really struggle to get these in. I must be very, very, very stupid. Let me know in the comments if I'm just a stupid bloke, but like, it takes me like literally 8 hours to seat them in there. Now, the first thing I would say is the face buttons are actually very, very, very close to the analog stick. And there's been some times in sort of frantic firefights I've been reaching to like reload or change weapon, and I end up sort of nudging the analog stick when I do that. Now, in some games, if you go down on the analog stick, it will flip you 180 degrees, and there's not a lot of margin for error there. So I think ideally I might have preferred a little bit more space between the face button and the analog stick, but that's a slightly minor gripe. I need to become better at kind of remembering these buttons, because they're sort of, it's not quite as intuitive as you might expect, even though they've got obviously the same layout as you get on a DualSense. I often end up pressing circle and I mean to press cross and stuff like that, but that's again my fault for being a bit stupid. But maybe this is good to analyze it from the perspective of myself. The other thing I would say off the bat is these buttons on the inside, the L1 and L2 and L1 and R1 buttons I talked about, so the equivalent of the shoulder buttons on the DualSense. These are very clicky buttons, and they require quite a lot of pressure to keep them pressed in. So if you're doing a game like a shooting game where you need to hold a gun, or any game where you're holding a weapon or something in your hands, often you'll find different control schemes. If your control scheme is that you need to keep these depressed, it can become like a fight. Again, I might just be really weak. It can become like a fight, just like hold on to your weapon. Now, a lot of the games have a control screen where this becomes a toggle, but it does make me think that it would be amazing if these controllers were pressure sensitive and it could sort of detect you applying pressure, because that pressure would be applied over a much bigger surface area, and therefore you could have a much lighter pressure that's being registered holding on to whatever it is. The fact that you have to direct all of your pressure onto this little button here, that's quite, you kind of feel like you have to really push it hard, can be a little bit immersive breaking. But that's a little minor trait. Obviously the analog sticks aren't as good as the ones on the DualSense. Where is my DualSense? My DualSense is over there, but they're not good. Let me get my DualSense. While I'm going over here, please do subscribe. In the moment I've gone, hit that subscribe button and that notification. Right, I'm back. You don't see that in other review videos. I'm terribly sorry for wasting your time. But anyway, that is the DualSense there. This is my DualSense that came with the PS5, and those are the analog triggers. And I'm going to put next to it, sorry, analog sticks. Can't speak today. And this is the analog stick on the PSVR2 controller. You can see that it's a lot smaller. This isn't a trick of the light or something. So you don't quite get the same dexterity. Now, as someone that had a PSP, rest in peace, and someone who had a PS Vita, rest in peace, this reminds me very much of the PS Vita thumbsticks. So the PS Vita also had two thumbsticks. Anyone who played something like Killzone Mercenary on the PS Vita is quite a similar experience using these analog sticks. So you're not going to be that precise. Now, the thing is, in games where you're using the right analog stick to sort of move around, again, all these games will have different control schemes. One will be one where it just snaps, so you could use a D-pad anyway if you had that. And one will be the smooth scrolling. And the smooth scrolling is going to be a little bit weird generally, because it takes you it's hard for your brain to kind of accept smooth scrolling. It's easy for your brain to be like, oh, I've snapped. Oh, I've snapped. So my point I'm trying to make is these analog sticks are not as good as the ones on the DualSense, but because sideways smooth scrolling in VR is a bit weird anyway, I don't think it's that much of a problem. That was quite a long-winded way to say it. Just bear in mind they're not as good quality. Now the rest of the package, the triggers on the back, they have the adaptive force, so you get that sometimes with certain guns, they'll be harder to press. It's a little bit gimmicky, I don't know. It's one of these things that I feel takes me out of the immersion, but let me know what you think in the comments. I've used sim racing pedals, for example, that do a similar thing, like they rumble, and again, it's sort of like a little bit immersion breaking for me, but the triggers are probably actually one of the best bits generally about these controllers. They are like proper full-featured triggers. This is not like the PS Vita like perspex triggers. These are proper chunky ones. Now this bit on the outside, you know, as far as I'm aware, it doesn't do anything. So it's just, I guess, harder for them to fall off. I don't know. But there's nothing going on here as far as I'm aware. In VR, when you look through your pass-through, it sort of lights up. And also there is an LED somewhere in the front when it comes to charging. But this, as far as I know, is a pure stylistic thing. It's not detecting, for example, that all your fingers are moving and then like you can do that in the game. Your inputs are limited to what you have here. So pretty much trigger and inside button. That's it. So I imagine in a future variation we might have sort of pressure sensitive areas that mean that it can detect when you're moving your hands like that. Maybe cameras on the inside or something, I don't know. But this is quite unusually looking, but as far as I know, it doesn't really serve any functional purpose. Now, if you're a VR professional, let me know in the chat if I've missed something there. But this is my initial impressions of these controllers, and I'm pretty happy with them. I wish they charged a bit easier, but I have to say they're pretty solid. Coming from the Move controllers for PSVR1, it's like literally, I'd say about 8 billion times better. Like, you cannot get worse than what we had with the Move controllers. And I'm actually pretty satisfied. So, yeah, pretty good job, Sony, on these. Quite enjoying them. Let me know in the comments what you think. Make sure to subscribe as well if you want to see. I paid for all this with my own money. So I don't have to say, oh, thanks, Sony. Actually, they're really good. No, but they are quite good. I do enjoy them, but I don't have to say that. I'm not wearing an Xbox shirt today. But anyway, unsponsored video. Hope you enjoy it. And I'll see you next time.